Every morning when I get up, I start off by making my bed. I heard this one great speech that says, if you could not complete the small tasks in life, how will you ever be able to complete the large tasks in life? And at the very least, if the paint job goes bad, which is highly likely, at least at the end of the day, you'll come home to a well-made bed. Now I start off every morning with a smile. I never get up in a bad mood. I say hi to all the pets that live free in the house, and they're always there to greet me. It's like they never go to sleep. There's few things in life I won't settle for, and one is a non-electronic brush. I also won't settle for not wearing this brand new Paint Society shirt that will soon be available. Once we're in the garage, we're ready to go with all my morning pills, which is a video for another time. And you might even seen my 2005 Honda Accord on YouTube where we did a full paint restoration. This morning's jams will be listening to 90s R&B and a little bit of Bob Marley. And the morning wouldn't be complete without the check engine light showing up. But that's okay because we're on the road and we're still riding, and Chick-fil-A is going to take care of that once we pull up and have our mobile order all ready. Of course, I'm going to go ahead with the chicken sandwich and the parfait. I eat about this junk food twice a month, and I feel like it's a good start to my Saturday morning. And once we roll into the shop by 7 o'clock, we're ready to start on our project. I was hoping it'd already be done, but it's not. But with a little bit of movie magic, I think we can get this thing all messed up pretty quick. And just like that, she's all messed up. Now in today's video, we're going to talk about paint booths and how some people and some subscribers think that a paint booth magically is going to give you a good paint job. And once again, welcome back to the channel. Now I hope you guys can hear me really good. You know, I've been battling a lot with the microphone setup. I got this new DJI 2. I got that recently, probably over a few months ago, and I've had issues with it ever since. It turns out after a lot of trial and error that the microphone number 1 has been clipping, and I've done everything to possibly get it to not clip. Long story short, we found it out by using the number 2, but sometimes I like to use both microphones if we're interviewing someone. Send it back to DJI. Had a lot of issues with trying to get it covered. Thankfully, they did come through. They got it covered. I got a brand new one, and I'm adding the windscreen now that was optional. I don't like the way it looks on the shirt, but I've been watching some other YouTubers, paint YouTubers, and they're using it, and they're getting really good sound. So hopefully this video we can still have the sounds of the booth and the sounds of my luscious, beautiful voice as we paint this beautiful S2000. And this vehicle is a 2006 Honda S2000. You don't see many of these on the road anymore and in this good a condition. And it only came in for some very minor scratching and minor denting in this area. Now you can see we kind of put like a helmet on top of the soft top. We never really want to risk getting any paint on these soft tops. They're very expensive. A lot of folks in paint booths, and a big misconception is once you have a paint booth, you're not going to get any overspray on the vehicle. And that is 100% wrong. I will tell you something, if you do not bag it like you're bagging it here, overspray will find its way through. If there's a crevice, if there's some sort of area that is not taped down, overspray will find its way through. A lot of guys I see when they have these types of booths, which are not downdrafts, this is a semi-downdraft, they actually call it. A lot of guys are still leaving the paper roll at the bottom. I wouldn't do that. See, the way that we do it is we cut it on both sides and we tie it in the middle, and then we tie it from the top and we make one big knot. So you have a knot coming from left, a knot coming from right, a knot coming from the middle, and then we tie those 3 knots together. When we do that, we come over to the front, we make another knot. So we've got a left-hand knot, a right-hand knot, one down the middle, all tied together. This kind of encompasses the whole entire vehicle, and then we take 2 pieces of tape. We tape the both sides all the way inside of the wheel well. Tape both sides inside of the wheel well, and this really helps to get all of the plastic underneath the car so it won't come up from underneath. So big misconception, you got a paint booth, you're not gonna get any overspray. Another big misconception is, and probably one of the biggest misconceptions in a paint booth, is I'm gonna get a clean job, and that's just not what it is. I remember my first job in this paint booth. I thought that was the end all. I was gonna get a perfect job. Dirt everywhere. If you don't prepare your car properly with clean prep, washing the vehicle, you cannot expect a clean job. I kind of put it like this. Let's say you're leaving football practice and you have a hot date and you're gonna clean yourself with wipes instead of taking a shower. If you clean this car down with wipes instead of taking a bath, a nice car wash, if you really want it to come out good, you're not gonna have a nice clean paint job. All right, so kind of equate it to that. Give the whole car a nice wash if you have the time. A lot of guys in the production shops, they're not going to have the time for that. The paint booth probably will help out with that, but the guys at home, wash your car. So it's so important to just really take a look at what we have going on instead of showing it to you from a distance. So this is a blend panel, and we know on an older car that blend panels don't become blend panels anymore, but luckily it's black. So this car had been repainted here. You can see the two different layers here. We had like a little chip that we started to clean up and fill. Granted, if it's a blend panel, it should be painted over, but we're not going to do that here since we have a lot of room and it's black. Another chip, something we feathered out. So we're not going to put paint over this. That's not really a good idea. You can see here we have just a little bit of body filler. So we got a lot going on here. So the best possible thing is to seal this. 2K urethane sealer is basically a thinned out primer with different additives into it. We're going to put the sealer on there, and that's going to kind of give us a nice even playing surface for our black to really lay down. Now before we hit that sealer up, make sure you got your gloves on and make sure you got your Paint Society lab coat on. This is one of the most comfortable lab coats that they make on the market, and if you want to support the channel and get your Paint Society lab coat with our logo on the back, make sure you check out the link in the description. So the next thing you want to do, if you can, is use a neutralizer or a static gun. You might ask yourself, well Brian, it's not plastic, it's metal. Understood. There's plastic all around the car that will attract that static electricity and that will hold dust, and that dust can fall off. So when we do this, what we like to do is first wipe it, because the wiping can cause static, and then follow it up with the neutralizer. Now, one thing I've noticed is that price on these guys has never really gone down. Usually when a trend comes out, something new, they'll eventually lower. I paid around $600 for this bad boy. I don't know how much it is now, but I think I looked and I think they're still around the same price range. But I also know that like the anti-stat gun and other pro stat, they're much more expensive. So considering this is probably the cheapest one. But we're using a tack rag, and this is an automotive tack rag, so it's got like a little bit of tackiness to it. And we're not digging into it, but we're gliding over the surface. And then use it on your plastic. All right, we're good to go. Now, one issue that we might have here is the use of sealer going too far. The exhaust fans are located over here, so it's pulling all the exhaust over the front of the panel, and we don't want that. Now, this was the only way that we could really get the car in the booth. It wasn't starting, and there was cars all around it, so we had to just back it in the way it was. So what can happen here is overspray will start to carry to that front part of that blend. So what we're gonna do is we're not gonna use any clear base over it like we do in regular videos. We're just gonna let it dry. It's a little bit cooler today. It's around 75 degrees in the booth. It's really good painting weather. We're gonna let it dry, and then what we can do is use a little bit of sandpaper to kind of clear off any of that blend area, because we don't wanna put clear over our sealer. It's gonna change the color. This is a W400 WBX cap. This is a sealer primer gun. This is an amazing sealer gun. Gonna be honest, it's an amazing base coat, clear coat gun as well. This is the one I just refurbished on the YouTube short and my Instagram as well. Make sure you follow me over on Instagram at paint.society. We're gonna run around 23 PSI. And we'll use the SRA. This is a reducer, so it's gonna help blend in that edge. This isn't clear blending additive, so it's not going to seal it in and then us have to sand that off. It's just going to basically smooth it out. When this dries, it's not something that's on the surface. It just basically evaporates. You see here, we're keeping it away from our edge trim tape. This is where we have a little bit of a molding that goes around the whole entire back of the actual top. To remove that molding is a 12-hour job. So if you're doing a full refinish and you're gonna remove the whole entire interior, do it properly, and that's the best way to do it. But luckily for us, on the corners here, you can get some trim tape underneath it. On the back side, it's nearly impossible. So we'll let this flash off. We have a nice consistent black sealer. This is gonna get us out of base coat quicker. And this is one of the things that you can do in a actual paint booth that will benefit you. You get less dust, but you can still do it at home as well. While this sealer dries, another big conception is all paint booths are temperature controlled. Like, we can turn the AC on here. I might be completely wrong, and I might be completely unaware that there is actual paint booths that have AC in them, but as far as I know, I don't know about any. This is a temperature controlled paint booth for if it's cold, you can run heat in it while you're painting to bring the temperature down. You can also do flash, which is drying the paint in between, and then a bake cycle, which is a much longer cycle. But if it's 95 degrees in this paint booth in the middle of the summer, I cannot turn the AC on. If you have a paint booth where you can turn the AC on in it, please let me know. I might just be really misinformed, but I can guarantee you any booth that I sprayed in doesn't have AC. The one thing that it might have is the paint booth might be in a shop with AC, which greatly benefits the paint. This is on the outdoor of the shop, so we're not underneath AC here. Big conception about paint booths, they are under AC. You can see how it's flashing here, but we're gonna turn the heat on to really get that 2K urethane sealer to kick. Now this control panel is on its last leg. There'll be times where it completely stops and it's like blurred out. You cannot control the paint booth at all. So it looks like we're gonna have to get a replacement screen on here, but here's the flash. I only know it by color because it's all messed up. It's gonna flash at 116 now. Let's see if we can set it to 120, and we'll stop it once it's all flashed. But if anyone's been having issues with these units, let us know, because the paint booth works properly, works great, but it's definitely not controlling it every like once or 2 weeks. It gives out, and then once you turn it off, like with the emergency reset, you cannot get it back on because there's no control functionality here. You have to wait like a whole day for it to reset, which is a big problem. So by the time this gets down to like 10, this thing's gonna be completely flashed and we'll be ready to go. That'll give us some time to do something else while it flashes. So while you're waiting on paint to dry, let paint dry. Go do something else, because if you're not letting it dry properly, you're gonna have more issues. You see how it's wet towards the bottom? And I didn't do one spot, I just took the whole thing to make it more consistent, but generally it's gonna be this consistency all the way through, and we'll turn it back on once it flashes off. This is what she looks like 10 minutes later. So it's all completely flashed off, and if I take my finger here, this is completely smooth, guys, to be honest. Now, I'm gonna go and run the sandpaper here, because I don't know, even though it's black, we're still gonna have a good color match, but I want a little bit of sealer off of here, and I'm gonna run the sandpaper right at this edge. Let's feel it. I mean, your hands are clean, guys, it's not gonna be a big deal. It feels super smooth here. It's a little bit crusty right in this area. So I'll show you what we're gonna do for that. Like I said, paint booths, they're not gonna solve paint issues. You gotta know how to really work with your paint. So I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do here. We're gonna sand this down, then we're gonna put like a clear base over it, and then we're gonna head right into the base coat. All right, so this is K600 with a hand pad. If you don't have one of these, guys, you're missing out. I've been using these on my channels for years from Eagle Abrasives. So I'm just gonna lightly go over the edge here. And the reason why I'm doing that is just to get off any of that sealer. I'm gonna be blending base, and I don't really necessarily wanna blend base all the way up into here. in case there's a slight mismatch. Generally, what I want is just the overspray to land in this area. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of 600, and this will take it off. Any of that sealer will take it off. You see right here? So what I'll do is I'll use a little bit of water-based cleaner, and this is my rag, right? This is my rag, my microfiber. And a good way to know that it's all off is by looking at your rag after doing this a couple times. So we're gonna wipe this off. Okay, for the most part, that's clean. And let's see if we have any more of that sealer coming off onto our hand pad. Just a little bit, okay? So we'll just use a little bit of water this time to help activate it and get the rest off just a little bit quicker. And then we'll be able to reveal our clear coat that was originally there to begin with. And these are just little things if you want to ensure a good color match. Again, honestly, it probably would be fine. But let's say this was a metallic, this is an older vehicle, paint has faded on the other panels. So let's try to keep that same faded base coat that is underneath, so it will match the same faded base coat that's underneath the truck. So they will match the same faded base coat that's underneath the trunk. So we're good here. This is all smooth. We don't need to mess with it. It's generally only going to be rough where the actual edge of the sealer is, your base coat is, your clear coat is, whatever it might be. All right, that's good to go. Next area for attention, it's going to be this area. And this is more of a concern because everything's been pulling this way. Look at that. Everything's coming this way. In order for me to not have any black sealer and this to be a true blend, I need to get all this off, okay? So this is so very important. Again, misconceptions of the paint booth. They're gonna have a perfect job right by spraying it. These are things that not everyone's gonna show you on their YouTube channels. But you need to know this information, because if you don't know this information, you're gonna have issues with color match and different things like that. So basically what's happening here is we need to keep the consistency of the paint in this area and the consistency of the color underneath the clear coat. So we have clear coat, which is the protective layer here, right? Clear coat's a protective layer that we're sanding, and when we sand it, it turns white. How do we know that we have all of it off? Well, we're not gonna have any more black overspray. So again, this is water-based cleaner. This is the same as spray away glass cleaner. I like to use it because it just kind of keeps the sandpaper lubricated a little bit longer. And there's a lot of folks that say no sanding in the booth. Blah, 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 blah. The amount of overspray that you get falling onto the ground falls just like sanding dust onto the ground once it's in the air, okay? A lot of folks will die not saying they sand in a booth just to say that they've never done it before. But this is real life, guys. This is real life situations. I guarantee you there's a painter out there that said they won't do it but have done it one point in their life, but they won't admit to it. Here, I'm showing you guys everything, but I already been here before, so I already knew that this was gonna be a step in the process. And again, really, only a step in the process because we're just doing a little bit of a nice gesture here and fixing up some dents in the blend panel. Typically, let's say the dents were not as far. Let's say the dents were in this area and our sealer were to end it here. We wouldn't have to do all this. It's just basically based off the amount of room we have and the amount of room we have to maybe just keep the consistency of that black into this area. Now you might ask the question, hey, well, what's gonna happen with all the black base coat? Isn't it gonna go over all this area? Yes, it is. It's gonna be in this area. And we're not gonna sand it. But guess what? It's gonna be the same color as the car. It's not gonna be sealer, which is just basically a primer.
So that's a difference. All right, it's perfectly smooth. Could you go over the rest of that? Yeah. Do we really want to? No. This is a non-sanding sealer. Most sealers, I think, are non-sanding anyways. They're not meant to be sanded. So let's not open it up. It's doing its job. It feels good. We can go over it with here, like this. And if I feel anything like a chunk, with black, guys, I don't want to buff this. So you take a little bit extra time to get it right here. It's going to spend a lot less time when it comes to buffing. And that's for sure.
Now, we probably could have gotten away with not using the SRA because we ended up sanding it, but for smaller areas, it works just good. Now, we're gonna be using something else to do the blending additive. We're gonna be using the Intercraft D1 drizzle, and I like it because it's got great control. We also have the disposable cup system that we're gonna be using for the blending additive as well as for the base coat. Now, this is the blending additive. Basically, it's clear base coat. And for this particular one, put it right in without any sort of reducer. And this is going to imitate the sheen of the actual base coat. And I use it as a visual aid. Now, I had one subscriber at one point tell me I was absolutely crazy to not use the blending additive as a wet bed. And I'm going to tell you something. There's many different ways you can use it, and I like to use it as a visual aid, and it will show you once we spray down the base exactly what I mean. So we're going to use it right past the sealer edge to the edge of the door next to the fender. We're going to put on one quick light coat and then one over by the trunk. And we'll spray our quick coat medium wet, just like we're going to spray our base coat. And as soon as this is done, then we're going to move over to the quarter panel area and spray that as well.
So again, we can see that it's dry to a nice sheen, and it's dry to a nice sheen. Same exact sheen as our base coat will dry. Now, we have sealer all here, complete coverage already, complete coverage. There's no need to mix up 15, 20 ounces. We have 10 ounces of base coat, completely covered in sealer. It's going to do a few things for us. We had a lot going on here. It's going to give us a nice uniform coat, number one. It's going to help us save paint. It's going to have a cleaner job. We're going to get out of here in 2 coats back to back, maybe 1.5. And we're going to be using the D1 drizzle, which has a really good fan on it. I really like it because, again, low overspray. LVLP gets the paint to the panel. That's why I'm choosing it for this particular paint job. Again, something's up here with the regulator. I'm going to end up changing the regulator, see if it's a regulator thing, but this isn't around 40 PSI. That's not really a normal PSI to spray at. So let's go ahead and get some base on here. 75% overlap. We're going to spray it on wet and see what happens. All right, so we got good coverage. Let's hit up the second coat right away. That's it, guys. That is it. We let this dry now. Less is more. Again, the reason why I like this gun, it doesn't have the biggest fan, but it's got a sharp fan, and it's not going to have messy overspray all over. So you can see that overspray here is kind of from the sealer that we've already sanded off, and it's still got the clear base here. And you're going to see when this dries, this base coat dries, it's going to dry all the same. And that's going to give me the visual aid that, hey, this is ready. So we got out of this in basically 1.5 coats because we used our sealer. And let's hit the flash and see what she looks like. And with that dry, in no way am I telling you that a paint booth is going to be the same thing as painting in a garage. It's not. But what I am telling you is that you can see here all the steps that we're taking on this vehicle are a painter's technique, really independent of where we are, whether we're in a paint booth, a garage, outside. These techniques are still used no matter where. And I made a video a long time ago about using that same K600 or K800 if you don't have a paint booth. But I recorded it in a paint booth. I got a lot of hate about it. But the thing a lot you guys didn't understand that made those comments is it doesn't matter where you're painting. The tricks are all still the same. And that is a great way to get a cleaner paint job if you're not in a paint booth, is by scuffing down your base or your sealer, applying one more coat of base before you clear coat. Now, will I tell you that a paint booth is going to get you to a good spot? 100%. If you're using the right preparations, you're cleaning your car, you have a good technique, the paint booth is going to help you get to the finish line. That doesn't mean you can't get there in a do-it-yourself garage, but it's going to require a little bit more work. I've been to many shops where painters have called me for help and they're getting dirty paint jobs and not having good paint jobs. I look around, I'm like, just because you got fans in the paint booth doesn't mean you're going to get a clean paint job. Is your floor clean? Are your walls clean? Did you blow out the booth? Are your filters changed? Have you washed your car? Are you wearing a Paint Society lab coat? Those are the types of things I'm looking for when I'm called to help. Let's head back into the booth. Let's look at the base coat. Taking a look at it in real time, see what we've done here? We don't have base here. We've got that clear base, the same sheen as the base coat. So effectively, I can tell that we got a beautiful blend because of my visual aid. Okay? All the way into the back here, same thing. Completely flashed off. It's ready for clear coat. We're gonna lay it down right now, 26 PSI, Series 2, amazing clear coat gun. Let's do it. Now, right before clear coat, I give it a quick little tacking. And after we tack, we can see there's no overspray on a tack cloth. There's a great indication paint job's gonna come out great. Now, my number one question I get all the time is, why do you tape your cup up? Why do you do that, Brian? Well, it's very simple. These cups are reused. This PPS system, they're reused. So sometimes that flaking paint can flake into the actual paint job. So that doesn't happen, I just go ahead and tape up that hard cup. Now I'm running this Series 2, 26 PSI, and I'm going past all of the edges. I don't want to get any runs or any buildup on those edges. I always like to break it into two different panels. I'm not really good at walking the vehicle when it comes to clear coat, so I learned what my best way and best technique is, and I stick to it. And that's what I've been doing for a long time, and it seems to work out pretty good. Now this flash time is between 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But let's take a look at that first coat. That's the first coat, guys. 26 PSI, Series 2. Guys, you can't beat that gun. You don't even need to get on it for it to atomize that well. We're out 6 inches almost from the panel. And we're not looking for a flat finish, we're looking for an OEM finish. So we want that OEM finish in there with the texture a little bit. We're not laying down the first coat too wet. Now, one thing I'm like kind of perplexed about that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I'm gonna take you into the mixing room to talk to you about, is flash times. Now, this is between a 5 and 8 minute flash time, and I'm gonna use the booth, which is a plus, to kick it. I'm gonna kick it up to 120, flash it, get all the solvents out. A lot of folks don't know what solvent pop is. I've seen some really interesting descriptions of solvent pop, where folks are showing something and they're saying that's solvent pop and it's like a rust bubble or something. Solvent pop will always be consistent along the whole entire panel, and it'll be little tiny dots that are consistent. If you over apply, if you use too much paint in one application, or 3-4 coats without enough flash time. That's why I don't like getting into more than 3 coats. 2 coats is all, that's it. You start to get that solvent pop. What looks good now will not look good in overnight or in a few hours. So one thing I want to talk about is flash time. We're gonna go hit the flash time timer right now, and that's gonna help kick it up a little bit, help it to really kind of tack up, so that when we go to put that second coat on. So I'm gonna let it run down to 10 minutes and see where it's at. But I want to talk to you about something. So there's this guy on Instagram, his name is called Scott Rides, and he's actually a
he's actually an airline pilot, and he works on his projects at home, and he's painting his first Mustang. And he doesn't know who I am, but I was really, really inspired by him because he reminds me of my younger self. Granted, I'm only 37, but I got put into the paint booth 8 years ago at the shop. So I've only been painting 8 years, not all my life. But he reminds me of my younger self. He sets up his inflatable paint booth up and down every time. He's feeling a little bit discouraged right now because he's got some parts that are coming out with orange peel. They recommend medium hardener outside underneath an inflatable tent. I don't think that's a good recommendation. I think that's very hard to work with, especially when you're painting like a whole hood or different huge parts. And then this is SPI clear coat, and they're also recommending 30 minutes flash time. He even wasn't sure about that, but he says, you know, as a first-time painter, you follow the rules. I don't know about 30-minute flash times in a non-paint booth. I mean, inflatable booth, whatever, but a non-paint booth, it just allows a lot of things to fall into the paint reactions, or paint, you know, starts to skin over too much. You put on another coat of paint, maybe it's not going to stick well. So if you guys know anything about that whole 30-minute flash time between your first and second coat only, I can understand if it's between, like, if you're multiple stacking coats between 3 and 4, 4 and 5, if you're doing that, yes, but this is between 1 and 2. So if you guys have any more knowledge about that, let me know, because I don't know about that. I've never heard of it. This is 10-minute flash time. Of course, this is more production, right? Slower clears, I've seen 15, 20 tops. I have never seen 30-minute flash time. So unless he didn't get it right and I'm not hearing it right, I don't know. But if you can, go over to Scott Rides. He doesn't know who I am, but he paints out of his own garage, his own inflatable booth. And I really feel like you can get inspired, because I watch some of his stories and I start to get inspired. And that's why you're starting to see some more of my videos back home, to be more creative about what you all are going through. You all don't have a booth. Some of you do, and some of you aren't getting good paint jobs at your booth, and that's why I'm here to help you. It's been about 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and lay that second coat on.
Remarkably so, as you get older in life, you continue to mature and learn. Now, one of the biggest things I've learned is patience, and the art of patience, whether it's my relationships or even just working. And I've learned the patience of waiting between the first and the second coat, and knowing that the first coat does not need to be beautiful, but we can always clear things up in the second coat. You see, the way that clear coat lays, it's layers. And in order to get a nice smooth layer, you're not all going to get it in the first coat. By allowing that first coat to tack for 5 to 10, 15 minutes, you can lay on a second and get a much smoother finish like we have here. But we still want to make sure we're matching that OEM texture so it looks like it's never been painted. I told you earlier about the misconceptions of a paint booth with no overspray, and clearly here we have some on the fender. Thank God we had some goof off overspray remover. Hit this stuff up right away, right after your paint, and it will wipe right off. It's really safe on the clear coat. You use a small microfiber towel, and you'll have no issues of streaking or marring up the paint. So it's a good idea to go around the vehicle before it exits the paint booth and make sure everything is removed before that clear coat finally dries. You can see here the finish is really good, but we'll probably go ahead and polish up that fender to get the same clarity and consistency once it's completely unmasked. Now, once we unmask the rest of the car, we're going to take very special care to remove the trim tape and all the trim tape that's around the vehicle. I like to unmask the car about a good hour and a half, but if you have any areas that are bridging onto the paint, which we don't, then you should remove those right away. Now, in a door jamb with the foam tape, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a crusty edge. All you gotta do is pick up a little piece of a cardboard and just wipe that edge. That will smooth out the edge completely and remove any crustiness from the foam tape or any debris that you might have, and then it's good as new and ready to go. Now, this job would not be normal without a dead battery, so once we got it all jumpered up, then we pulled it out of the paint booth. We're about 2 hours after the last coat of clear coat, and we're ready now to get the rest of the parts loaded to complete this job. A new door handle, an aftermarket front lip, and a couple bumpers that are brand new. We're going to follow the same exact process, but this time we're using a flex agent in all of our plastic parts. This is an OEM aftermarket style lip. It's very hard to find the original, but they've done a pretty good job of replicating it. These are brand new bumpers that are scuffed with a 400 grit, and then they're sealed with a black sealer. By sealing with this black sealer, we're going to be able to get out of paint in probably about 1 coat. When we go ahead and seal, it really seals down the actual surface so that the paint can actually stay on top rather than soak in. We're going to be using the Intercraft D1 Drizzle, and guess what? I haven't even cleaned out this gun since we last laid base on the quarter panel and the door. Base coat really doesn't dry, and it doesn't require you to actually clean out the spray gun. But as far as the sealer gun and the clear coat, those were cleaned out only a couple minutes after we did the last spraying because they had a 2K hardener in them, and once you have that in there, it will automatically dry. You're gonna get a lot more time out of a base coat that is not activated. So 1 good coat on all the parts since it's already been sealed, and we pretty much have complete and full coverage. Now, I always like to teach everyone that watches my videos that you're gonna get coverage plus 1 coat. And that's exactly what we did here in Supersonic Speed. Coverage plus 1 fast coat. Now, the best thing about working flat rate is I'm getting paid by the parts that I'm painting, not the time that I'm here. So this is a 35-hour job. Granted, I've been working on preparing the parts beforehand as combo techs. We're gonna get paid for the body work, the priming, everything that it takes to lead up to it. So with a 35 hours I'm making on this total job and getting it all complete within just a few days, we can really see how you can make more money if you are motivated in painting and you got your technique and your processes down. These parts came out really nice with very minimal to no buffing, and that's exactly what we want. There's honestly no greater feeling than leaving a shop on a good note and getting into the car you painted all by yourself and just rolling down the road. All right, guys, so today is done. It's 5:01. We're leaving the shop, and I started around 6 o'clock. Man, today I needed to paint. Today I needed to clear my mind. It's a Saturday. We're by ourselves in the shop 1 Saturday a week. One of us works, and I just needed to clear the mind. And paint's always been there for me. I've been painting 8 years professionally, 15, 16 years on my own in the backyard, and it's just always been, you know, that type of release to just clear your mind, put your music on it, and do your thing. Paint's also been there to ruin my day as well when things are going good. Now, that's not a regular day for me to work at the body shop all day. That's a Saturday thing. I will come in at 3 to 8 after I'm done with my day job as a physical educator for a elementary school. That is a 7:30 to 3 o'clock gig. But hopefully y'all learned something today from the video. And guys, this is Brian from Paint Insider reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.